following is a presentation of TFNN. Nine before 9 with John Logan. 9 minutes on the stock markets before 9 a.m. every trading day. Call now, toll free, 877-927-6648, or internationally, 727-445-1044. Now, John Logan.
Hi, guys. Welcome to the update. Here we go. S&Ps, let's take a look at them. Here's your inflection points to be aware of, just mousing over the sell structure and looking at our speed dials up top, breadth calculations. I mean, there's really even got an error up on the weekly there, even though we're within the balanced area. So we've got green cells basically across the board, and we've obviously got a gap up this morning. I wanted to show you this on the e-signal charts here. Here's the weekly. Had that weekly close back in the balanced area above 2341, and we're just kind of moving up to 2386.87. That's the top of the profile on the weekly here. And the daily, again, gapped up above profiles yesterday, didn't really even look back. So got some resistance around that weekly unfair high. Kind of amazed, got some really good reports out on some Dow components, pretty big gap up this morning. Let's take a look at McDonald's really quick. And as we look at this pre-market, trading about 137, 138. And if you look at McDonald's, really hadn't given you a reason to take the trade off if you've been long the stock. This is our long-term, ultra long-term weekly view here. Here's the daily, not even reflecting that gap up. But what do you do with it this morning? You know, been in a pretty good move up. The market's gapping up. I actually wouldn't buy this morning if you're waking up thinking it's time to buy McDonald's finally. You got to sit tight here. I actually think we may have somewhat of a retracement, and the way to really play that in a safe way is to look for some new profiles on the short-term 60-minute or 240 and just kind of wait for those to develop. They're going to be emitted pretty quickly. If you go into MCD here in the scanner, let me get that up here. There's McDonald's Corp. You'll see it's pretty much green across the board. So what you're looking for is some new hints of at least some stalls here with yellow peelbacks happening in the cells, and then being able to hopefully get some borders crossed on the 60-minute to start looking at a retracement trade. But until then, no dice. Let's take a look at a couple other things pre-market here. Let's take a look at crude, and we're going to look at the XLE. This is something that has really been showing itself, which is kind of crazy. The dollar has continued to head south here. This is the dollar, looking at our continuous contract on the dollar. We're sitting on recent lows. I think Tom called this pretty well, getting back below 99.63. We never even got a retracement back up into that area, and I think we had ultimately talked about 97.15 being the target on the dollar. And if you look at crude, going back to crude, you know, this no default reaction upward in this particular commodity. No reason to take this trade-off right now on the short side. And looks like we may revisit 47. Taking a look at gold, you know, repricing itself not that well, I might add too. You've got massive support at 1260 and a half in that general area. We've reached a low this morning of 1266. So, you know, might want to let this thing edge down a little bit farther before you back the truck up on gold. But I fully believe that is still the trade there, to block out the short side and trade gold from the long side when it's appropriate. And the scanner is going to give you those inflection points to try to pick the battles and orient the stops. Here's the 10-year. You know, trading down below profiles this morning on the daily, but I'm actually looking at this as a possible buy point. I'd rather be buying treasuries above 125.20 and trying to hang in there with stops than to try to short the market right now, short the S&Ps in particular. Let's take a look at the VIX. This thing has just cratered quickly. Man, unbelievable. And that's where we're at, opening up this week and heading lower. Here's the recent lows on the VIX. Just, whew, looking ugly there. But again, I think you've got to be buying volatility down here below 11 and trying to do some long-term option plays, lottery tickets, if you will, on the VIX. This market's just completely exploded on the upside pretty quickly. And when we look at the VIX, you've got to be looking to just try to play some long-term lottery tickets on the long side on options when we get into this area, no matter what, basically. Let's take a look at silver. We talked about 18, 14, 15, the big numbers. That was breached last week, and now we're just kind of floating around the balanced area. Don't really feel comfortable about going long silver relative to being long gold right now. That gold trade at 1260 and a half, to me, is the more high probability setup here. Let's take a look at November beans. And as we look at this, just not a lot of leverage here, just trading right in the balanced area on the long-term weekly, just kind of leaving this alone right now, not really repricing itself any degree higher. Let's take a look at the XLF. This is the financials. Let's see what these guys are doing. This morning, 23.85. So trading basically up to the area, unfair highs on the daily in that general area. I don't mind looking at this from the short side with some stops in place. It would be a little bit easier to try to orient stops above 24.11 on this particular ETF than to try to short the market. It's one of those kind of what have you done for me lately ETFs, and it's not actually acting that well relative to the market. So just kind of popping its head up with the market. Here's the XLE that we talked about wanting to revisit. Let's see where we're at this morning. Pre-market, this is a real print around 68 and a half. So again, I like trading the XLE from the long side, getting back above 68.45 relative to trading gold from the long side or trading crude from the long side right now. I think you got a decent opportunity on this one, a pretty low risk trade actually. You can always go back into the scanner and try to look at the oil sector, go into this ETF grid, and there it is in the seller. And try to look at some long plays. VLO, let's take a look at that one. Here's where we're at. Decent little move up yesterday. Here's VLO again, popping above that profile. There's the support area at around 65.95 on VLO. So kind of looking at some strong stocks in here. EQT Corp, of course, always on the board. Here's where we're at relative to that. And again, trying to increase your odds on the long crude trade if you're wanting to be long crude right now. All right, let's take a look at our copper trade here. Just starting to finally kind of poke our head above 2.577, but again, not a big reaction here. A weekly close is going to determine this. I've talked about the worm may have turned on this particular trade, but again, copper, you've got to look for a weekly close now. Guys, thanks very much for joining us this morning. Stay tuned for Larry and the rest of the hosts on TFNN. Have a good day trading.
Since 1984, Basil Chapman has been using the Chapman Wave methodology to advise traders of his expert market opinion. While originally hand-drawing charts from the late 1970s into the 1980s, Basil noticed that prices under most circumstances virtually always had a certain number of legs to the upside before declining sharply. Later, Basil found that computer software, which included the standard market technical indicators, enhanced the degree of accuracy in calling price turns, as well as market trend calls. Thus was born the Chapman Wave sequence. Using the Chapman Wave methodology along with other indicators, Basil Chapman advises his subscribers of his expert market opinion each market day with his opening call newsletter. Right now, you can get a 2-week free trial to the opening call, Basil's daily trading newsletter, by visiting the front page of TFNN.com. Cancel at any time during that trial and pay absolutely nothing. Get your 2-week free trial to Basil's newsletter, The Opening Call, today by visiting TFNN.com.